What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It is Kyle coming back at you with another video from a slightly further away camera. I have been getting some questions recently on the channel, predominantly around my video that I made a few months ago when I was back at Amazon. If you don't know, I was with Amazon as an area manager for a few months and ended up switching into the financial industry and joining Charles Schwab as a financial consultant not too long ago. And I've been getting some questions. People have been asking me about the process in switching job industries and getting into finance. I think that a lot of people like the idea of being in finance and don't have a background in it and wonder how they can get in it as well. So I wanted to make this video to give you guys my thoughts and opinions and just kind of share my experiences with sort of how I've gone through the process of transitioning into finance and being someone who doesn't have any experience in the industry, kind of things that I would recommend to you if this was an area of business that you were interested in getting into. So we'll jump into it right now. I've got a list of a few things that I wanted to talk about in this video. And the first thing I did want to say kind of before I get into the list is that, you know, getting into finance, it's not an industry that is impenetrable, meaning if you studied something else, let's say you studied philosophy or something completely out of the financial industry, it is still possible to get into it. You know, there really isn't any industry that I would say other than something where you may need to go to medical school or, you know, a highly specialized industry that is definitely something that you're able to do if you really want to. And, you know, the fact that you don't need to go to a 4-year university on top of 4 years of medical school to get into it is great. And I don't want anyone to feel as if they can't get into it because they don't have the educational background or they are 40 years old and they don't have any experience in finance. It's possible regardless of what your situation is. So I just wanted to throw that out there before we get into this video, just so that you guys don't feel discouraged if you've been trying to get into it and you haven't done so yet. But we'll get right into the list here. Some things that I wanted to talk about, things that I think are very helpful to understand when getting into the finance industry. So let's hop right into it. So the first thing that I would say is really important when you're looking at getting into finance is really understanding what you want to do, right? You might think that finance is just looking at a balance sheet and looking at how to make the most money possible. And while that certainly is a position that you can get into, there are a lot of other different things that you can do within finance. Are you someone that really likes to get into spreadsheets and get into Excel documents and, you know, look at data and quantitative analysis, things like that? Or you can go on the other spectrum or on the other side of the spectrum and look at something that might be more client facing. Would you rather be working with families and running them through a financial plan, trying to help set a young couple up for retirement? Something like that. So you really need to kind of weigh your options and figure out where you want to be within finance, right? Because there are a lot of different jobs, just like a lot of industries, but you need to figure out what you want to do, what you would be good at, hone down into that, and then that's where you're going to start your search and understand kind of what you need to do to get into that industry and to get into the position. Now that you've got a rough idea as to what the position looks like that you'd like to be in, you need to understand what the qualifications are to get into it. Like I said earlier, you know, finance isn't really an industry where you need to go to medical school for 48 years and spend your residency in Cambodia studying, you know, patience and understanding how cells reproduce. It's not like that. You need to understand that there are still some qualifications that you might need depending on the situation or the position that you want to be in. Right? So if you are someone who wants to work with clients and you want to recommend securities, you want to open up accounts for them, there might be licensing requirements that you need to do, whether or not you need to have those before you come in, or those are something that might need to be done and you might need to take these examinations within a certain amount of time, starting with the company. So that's something I had to do and am in the process of doing with Charles Schwab right now is getting licensed and so that I can recommend securities to people. There might be, you know, being proficient in certain web applications or programs, things that you need to consider. So when you start to take a look at some of the positions that you're interested in, You want to make sure that you're looking at the requirements of that position and understanding what you need to be doing to come into it and to actually be qualified for it. You can't just say, I want to get into finance, snap your fingers, and then you're all of a sudden going to have 10 job offers or interviews lined up, even if you don't have the qualifications that they say they're looking for, right? It's not going to work like that. So you want to make sure you're doing what you can to understand what the qualifications are, working towards them as best as you can right now before you even have the position, or just understanding that those might be qualifications or licensing requirements that you're going to need to get when you come into the firm. All right, so you understand the type of position you want, and you understand the job requirements of that position. The next thing that we need to take a look at is your resume. And this might be something that you're just like, God, I hate to look at the resume. I hate working on it. I hate trying to figure out if it's up to snuff and it's what it needs to be. But you need to understand that the resume is one of the first, it's the initial impression. It's that first thing that someone's really going to look at when they're considering if they really want to bring you into a company, especially if you don't have any of that relevant experience in finance. You need to make sure that your resume is as perfect as possible. I cannot stress that enough. It's got to be perfect. Like, you really need to make sure that everything is laid out the way it should be. There's no errors. You've put all of your relevant job experience. You've really leveraged the skills that you've built through past experiences to show someone why you would be a strong asset in the financial industry and why you would do well for their firm and why you're essentially going to help them make more money. Because this is finance, and just like most businesses, we're not just in this for just having fun, right? I mean, we're here to make money, and especially when you're in finance, you need to put yourself in a position to explain to someone why you're going to be an asset for them and why you're going to help them produce. Okay, so let's make sure that that resume is up to date and is in the best shape possible to help land you that interview. The next thing I'm going to recommend is one that people might find to be a little bit intimidating, but it's something that's super important, especially in an industry like finance, because of how closely people network with each other and the connections that are built within the industry. Is that I think it's super important to reach out and network with professionals that are in the industry, right? Whether that's through LinkedIn or a career fair or a web seminar. Doesn't even need to be in person. If you can do it remotely or over the phone, doesn't really matter. As long as you're having conversations with someone in the industry, I think that there is nothing that is more beneficial than being able to do that. And ideally, you want to find someone that's in a position similar to one that you're getting into so that you can understand what the expectations are, things that they recommend you do, things that they would have done differently coming in. It's so important to talk to people that are in the industry, and especially because who knows, they might work for a firm that's always hiring new people. And they might be able to put in a good word for you or say, you know what, I had a really great conversation with so-and-so because they were interested in the industry. And just being able to explain your passion for why you're trying to get into finance is going to be so, so crucial into getting into the industry if you have no experience. Even if you have experience, you're just trying to find a new job within finance, being able to talk to people and explain that is going to be crucial to you getting that interview or you getting that position. And I don't want to say that you should network with people ultimately to just ask them to help you get an interview with their company, because that's not how this should go. Maybe this is a situation where you talk to someone and you have a great conversation and you learn a lot from them, but it's a one and done, okay? You just learned a lot of information from somebody that was very valuable to you, but maybe it seemed like one of those situations where you don't feel necessarily comfortable asking them to continue to talk to you on a routine basis, or to maybe ask them if they know anybody that is within their company that's looking to expand or hire someone else. It might not always be that situation, but you want to make sure that you're able to take something away from every conversation. But ultimately, it's a good opportunity, and a lot of people find that, especially with finance, if you know someone in the industry, your chances of getting that interview are going to be so much higher if you have that connection and you're able to have them kind of help you just get your foot in the door. See, all you need to do is just get the foot in the door through them, and then your chances of getting the job are going to be so much better. I can't stress that enough, but it's not something that you just want to force. You don't want to go to someone and ask them for their advice and to have them sacrifice their time to help you just so that you can try to peg them for, hey man, like, how do I get an interview or something like that. I've had people that have come to me and ask for advice, to which I will give them advice, and then ultimately they try to hammer and be like, hey, like, are there any openings within your company? And it's just like, is that really all you're here for? And it can be a little bit of a turnoff to someone, especially if they're trying to help you and go out of their way. You'd be surprised at how many people within the industry are willing to help, and especially older people that are looking to kind of pass down the torch, right, and move it on to the next generation. So you don't want to be too greedy about it, but also don't feel afraid to get assertive in some ways, and to ask them and to be curious about potential openings within their company, or reaching out and networking with other people that they might know in the industry, and going to them and just through talking to people without even saying, hey, I really need a job, you're kind of putting that feeler out there, and they start talking amongst themselves about, wow, Greg really, really is passionate about this, and I've talked to him, and you've talked to him, and all this, or whatever it is, right? So don't be afraid to do that. Another thing that I recommend is, if you don't, especially, this really goes for people that don't have experience in the industry, is trying to find an unconventional way of explaining your passion and your enthusiasm as to why you really want to get into finance. Someone looks at Joe Schmo, who just put in their resume and doesn't have any experience and has been working at Amazon for his entire life, and thinking to themselves, why would I hire someone like this who has no experience when there's 50 other people that are fully licensed, ready to go? But let's say you have something on your resume like, oh, I don't know, a YouTube channel where you talk about finance, or maybe you write a blog where you talk about the markets and explain your viewpoints, or something like that. Something that separates yourself from someone else and lets an interviewer or someone within the industry know, hey, this person might not be licensed and ready to go and ready to start talking to clients right off the bat, but look what they're doing on their own time, where they're not getting paid, and they're just doing it because they have a passion for it, right? That's kind of something that I leveraged when I came in with Schwab, is that, while I wasn't licensed or didn't have any of that background, I told them about my YouTube channel, about how I like to talk about finance, and not because, I'm making money off of it or anything like that, but just because I have a passion for it, and I want to help people, right? So something like that can go a super long way in kind of distinguishing yourself from the rest of the pack. Something really that I would consider. And lastly, something that is also important is, you might have this expectation or these wild imaginations of being able to land your dream job within finance right off the bat. But it might be a situation where it's just not possible. So considering a more entry-level position within finance, maybe working at a bank or doing an internship or something, just to kind of get a little bit of that experience that a lot of companies might want to see within the industry, is going to be something that, well, you might not want it to work out that way. You might need to kiss a few frogs first before you can kind of get to where you want to be. So it's definitely something that people don't necessarily like to hear, but something they do need to hear, because you can't just come into the industry and expect to be making $400,000 a year doing exactly what you want to be doing, right? So definitely something to keep in mind and to understand the reality of things. I think it's super important, and I'm going to cut it there because I don't feel as if it makes sense to ramble on about anything else. I think that if you're able to kind of take some of what I said and digest it and use that and leverage it to kind of position yourself within the industry, I think it's going to be super helpful. But obviously, if you guys have any questions or need help with anything, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. Also, feel free to message me on LinkedIn or Instagram. Till next time, I will see you guys later. Peace out.